Hello, AP US class. This is Mr. Shalou back for another rousing edition of Teacher Discussion. Today, we are going to be looking at the response to the New Deal. Not everything worked out the way that FDR wanted it to. There were a lot of people that were very happy and pleased that the government was finally stepping in for the first time. And then obviously there are critics, people that felt that too much was being done, or in some cases, not even enough was being done. So, three of the major characters that really were influential in being critical to FDR are the senator from Louisiana, Huey Long. There was a minister, Francis Townsend, and Father Coughlin. So, looking at these three people, first you have Huey Long feeling that it just wasn't doing enough, that the rich should be heavily taxed in order to provide more of a socialist system where everybody benefited. He called this system Share Our Wealth. Francis Townsend is going to be a little more famous a little bit later on. He proposes a $200 a month pension program for people over the age of 60. This is going to eventually become our modern day Social Security system. So, providing this monthly pension program for retired or older Americans would allow them to retire and allow for more jobs to open up from the older population leaving the workforce, making it better for employment overall, stimulating the economy. And then Father Coughlin was this religious leader. He was known as the radio priest, who believed that the government should own all of the businesses involving banks, utilities, natural resources, things that were essential to the economy. A lot of opponents felt that the New Deal was doing way too much. Businesses especially felt that there was too much government involvement. They didn't really like the competition when the government was creating all of these new jobs programs. They felt that there was too much regulation of business. Remember, these are people that believed in laissez-faire, so hands off with the government. And with all of this government intervention, they just felt that it was too interfering with the way that capitalism works in society. They also didn't like that workers, the lower classes and the working classes, were actually getting something for the first time ever. They were very critical of the government stepping in and influencing their profits margins and stuff. So they claimed Roosevelt was behaving like a dictator in the same way that Hitler was kind of controlling through his Nazi party in Germany. And we will talk a little bit later on about Benito Mussolini in Italy, and we will talk also about Stalin in the Soviet Union. And these authoritarians are kind of similar in that the government is transforming the economy. They are taking over, they're heavily regulating and controlling all of the means of production. And so Roosevelt was also seen as an authoritarian in many respects because of the overreaching government involvement that was taking place. There were other critics that felt that the New Deal was making people rely on the government rather than helping themselves. Those rugged individualists felt that it should be up to the individual to pull up their bootstraps and be able to solve the problems that they were facing. And that by simply allowing the government to provide handouts or welfare, they were making people lazy. And this was an un-American concept. There was one further issue with FDR, and this is probably the most valid criticism of anything that he experienced. So, in 1935, 2 years after the beginning of the New Deal programs and having FDR in office, the Supreme Court makes a number of decisions declaring that the New Deal programs that were established by the government were not constitutional. The National Recovery Administration, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, and there's like 8 other New Deal programs that in some way, shape, or form were not adhering to the Constitution. And the idea behind that was that the government was overstepping its powers. It was regulating certain industries where the Constitution does not give the chief executive, the executive branch, the power to do these things. So when the Supreme Court brings down these decisions, FDR, winning the next election in 1936, decides that because he has the support of the people, he feels entitled to kind of change the makeup of the Supreme Court. Now, the judicial branch does not officially have a set number of members on the Supreme Court. We traditionally have had 9 justices. You need an odd number so you can have those kind of decisions. But there is nothing in the Constitution that says you only need 9 Supreme Court justices. So Roosevelt decides that he's going to increase the number of Supreme Court justices from 9 to 15. And the number he came up with was based on how many new justices he would need on the Supreme Court in order to justify his New Deal programs. People that would be supportive, he would be able to appoint, and the Senate would then have to confirm these justices. Well, he thought that if he could add 6 justices, they would be very liberal and they would support these New Deal programs, and he would be able to overturn those previous Supreme Court decisions. And the New Deal would continue to work out. Again, this kind of seems like an authoritarian move. You could see Hitler in Germany doing something like this to influence the decisions of the court system, or you could see Stalin doing something where he would influence the judicial decisions of his own country. So a lot of people saw this as a power grab. They saw that by influencing the Supreme Court, he was trying to control 2 branches of our government. And this is a government that's supposed to be balanced and that there's checks in the powers. So this was not a supported move. It was called court packing. And so this is probably the one major criticism that FDR receives, and the one reason why he's not often seen as the best president in American history. He's usually the top 2, top 3, but he's never kind of seen as the number 1 president, even though he helped us survive 2 of the worst crises that our country had ever faced, with the Great Depression and then later on with World War II. This court packing, though, was kind of a stain on his legacy in trying to overpower this branch of the government. They accused him of trying to pack the court, that they would threaten the balance of power in government, that it would forever kind of stain any decisions that would be made, not only with the Supreme Court, but just any legislation that came out of Congress as well. So after 6 months, FDR is going to withdraw this request. It never actually gets on board. There's never any justices that are going to be confirmed through the court system. And for all of the issues that this faced, FDR really does have his opportunity to change the Supreme Court anyways, because he serves 12 years as president, and in those 12 years, he's able to replace all 9 justices in one way or another through retirements or through people passing away. So he does end up getting the Supreme Court that he wants anyways, through natural processes. So you can see here with the political cartoons, the court packing was very much a very important issue that was dealt with, that was seen as a negative. And I've seen on the past Regents exams, and at least one of the last 3 AP exams had a significant question devoted to this court packing. So that's why I'm bringing that up specifically. So 2 things that I want to point out that were successful responses to the New Deal was that FDR trying to calm the fears of his critics, is going to involve himself in a second New Deal. In the second term in office, he's going to pass further regulation on the economy, but making sure that they are constitutionally based, that these are initiatives that are going to be protected under the law. And not only that, they're going to be very beneficial, and we still hold these processes today. They are the foundation of our employment law in the United States. So the two that you need to be aware of are the National Labor Relations Act and the Fair Labor Standards Act. So first, the Wagner Act. So this really kind of started with the first New Deal, when they were trying to fix the problems of what caused the Depression in the first place, the reform types of programs. What the National Labor Relations Act is going to do is protect workers from joining unions, from being fired. But really, the one thing about the Wagner Act, when you hear the Wagner Act, what you need to hear is collective bargaining, allowing workers, rather than having to negotiate their contracts individually, one-on-one, you have a union being able to negotiate a contract so that everyone is treated equally. So everyone receives the same pay based on their years of service, based on the hours that they produce. So this is a much different way, rather than having to individually decide how much you're going to get paid and not really having an understanding and not having a lot of weight associated with like being able to negotiate with an employer. Now, when you have hundreds or thousands of employees that you're also negotiating for at the same time, there's a lot more of an influence on getting the best possible conditions. So not only pay, but working conditions as well. And the Congress of Industrial Organizations, which is part of the American Federation of Labor today, the AFL-CIO, they are going to be the most influential union that is going to grow out of this time period. So you have union membership that's going to increase from 3 to 9 million, and then the largest union in the United States is part of this Congress of Industrial Organizations. The other major legislation that I want to bring up is the Fair Labor Standards Act. So this created the first official federal minimum wage. At the time, it was 40 cents an hour. Today, you can see that we are approaching $10, $11 an hour. I should probably know what the actual federal minimum wage is. The good news is in New York, our minimum wage is actually higher than in other what the federal government allows. Eventually, we're going to be moving toward a $15 an hour minimum wage. The Fair Labor Standards Act officially set the work week at 44 hours. Today, it is the standard to be 40 hours, 8 hours a day. It also creates child labor laws, which banning children under, I don't know if you really call somebody 15 or 14 a child, but according to the law, anybody under the age of 16 is considered a minor, a child, and they are prohibited from working in most industries. There are still some exceptions to that. You can have people under the age of 16 working in like on farms, or you could have people under the age of 16 working in like family-owned businesses. But for the most part, you can't receive your working papers for most jobs until the age of 16. Last thing, actually, there's two things I want to point out. Sorry. Social Security. One thing that you are all identified by is your Social Security number. When you're born, you are given a number, and this has kind of created the de facto identification for the United States. There's no official ID. There's no federal birth certificate, or like when you are being identified, you usually use your driver's license for New York State. Well, Social Security becomes the de facto identification. This program is going to be established as a three-pronged system. it is going to set up a pension system for people that are retiring. So at the moment, you do not start collecting your full retirement benefits until you are 65. That is when Social Security starts to kick in. You, as a worker, pay into this system. Every paycheck you make will pay into Social Security. There is a line whenever you get your pay stub from working, it will say FICA, FICA. And FICA is the branch, the bureau that is collecting Social Security from your paycheck. And the idea is that when you pay into the system throughout all your working years, and then when you are done working, you will collect money in return from all of the years of service that you have provided. So there's the pension system. The second part of Social Security is an unemployment insurance system. People that lose their jobs are entitled to unemployment benefits. Social Security is going to provide that that umbrella to kind of soften the blow of losing your job. So unemployment usually lasts about a year and 2 years max. I think 99 weeks is the longest that you can contribute or you can collect unemployment insurance. Excuse me. And then the final element of Social Security is providing money, providing state funding to support people that are children that have no parents or that are staying with legal guardians. People with disabilities, mainly women and children, are able to collect these kinds of welfare benefits through Social Security. Now, there's criticisms of Social Security on both sides of the political spectrum. People that are more liberal feel that this is not fair, mainly because farmers aren't working in a traditional way where they're getting a pay stub. So farmers don't get to benefit from Social Security, retirement pension. You have a lot of people who were mainly women and minorities that were domestic servants that were being paid under the table, which means that they weren't collecting payment stubs. So they were not entitled to the Social Security benefits of the time. People that are self-employed, people that live at home and take care of and raise children. So that is seen as a very important job within society, but again, not collecting a paycheck. So they are not getting into the pension system for Social Security. So there's people feeling that there's enough people falling through the cracks that are not collecting Social Security, and that's a problem. Then you have people on the other end of the political spectrum with conservatives feeling that this is way too intrusive in people's lives. You're taking money directly from their paycheck without them having a say in the matter. This is not an optional thing. It is mandatory that this is collected from your hard-earned working, your pay. So people feel that this is just another way for the government to take money from people that are hardworking, that did not ask for a handout, did not ask for this benefit. They feel that it should be more of an option rather than a requirement from the government. We still have Social Security around today. It provides a lot of the benefits that we have for our older population: medical benefits, pension, unemployment insurance, people that simply do not have access to other ways of income the longer that you are alive. All right, this is the last slide. I promise I'll get you out on this. Really, so the New Deal, it's going to transform American society. It is by far the most that the government has ever involved itself in people's everyday lives. The economic well-being, the standard of living of people. And so this program, there's many, many programs that take place throughout FDR's presidency. There's a lot of people that are critical of the government intervention in people's lives. And at the same time, there's people that feel the New Deal programs were absolutely necessary, that our country would have basically been destroyed economically if these government interventions did not take place. So if you look down the list of criticisms, the more conservative members of society felt that the government was just too big. It was becoming too powerful, too intrusive in people's lives, that the programs were way too expensive. We had to create enormous amount of government debt, billions and billions, even into the trillions of dollars for the first time ever, that the government was spending that money when it didn't actually have that money at its disposal. So these were expensive programs. So they look at the national debt. This is really competing against the idea of capitalism, that everything, supply and demand, would be dictated rather than the government actually being involved in controlling how much is being produced, at what price it's going to be produced. And so they felt that this approach was catastrophic to the well-being of American society. It makes people lazy. It's overly dependent on government, this welfare idea. And it didn't actually end the Depression. I mean, the Depression starts in 1929. In 1933, the first New Deal programs are still in place. And as of World War One breaking out, not World War One, excuse me, World War Two breaking out, America is still in the Depression. It's not until America joins the fight in 1941, and you have millions upon millions of men entering the military, and you have millions of more jobs that are going to open up in order to support the war effort. That's when the Depression comes to an end. So, did these New Deal programs actually accomplish what they were hoping to? Well, a lot of critics would say no, they didn't. At the same time, people that support the New Deal and everything that was done by the government, these were immediate needs that the government is for our benefit. It softened the worst effects of the Depression, which actually can be based on data. You can see what impact these programs had on spending and on job opportunities. The country is going to be transformed by these programs. It's going to be beautified by the Civilian Conservation Corps. The WPA is going to inspire pride in the arts and culture of American society. It gives people hope. Millions of farmers and millions of working class Americans are going to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. The government is now regulating the economy, making sure that businesses can't exploit workers, provides a safety net for banks and people having their money in banks. The stock market is now controlled by the SEC so that it cannot have any major crashes like the catastrophic crash in 1929. Government can take care of citizens, and not just older Americans. It's going to be all areas of society that are going to benefit from government assistance. It's going to have big businesses are going to benefit as well. The government is going to bail out these major industries when they have economic troubles as well. And essentially, a lot of Americans feel that this program saved the democratic way of life. Despite all the criticisms of authoritarian reach by FDR, we did not become Nazi Germany, or we did not become fascist Italy or Soviet Russia. We are able to maintain our constitutional democratic republic. And yes, there's some government overreach, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and the government was able to sustain itself despite all of the threats to American society. So, at the end of the day, these programs kept the country afloat, and we will see in the next chapter, as we move towards World War II, that the country was able to be so successful because of the actions of FDR with the New Deal. Thank you very much for listening to my TED Talk. I will speak to you one more time when we finish section 4. Hope you're all doing well. If you have any questions, please email or leave a comment. Get up those YouTube views, because right now I look kind of depressed and I'm wondering if I need to keep doing these videos or not. I want to keep informed with you guys. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're safe. I miss you. I hope we don't have to do too many more videos so that we can be back in person learning moving forward. Talk to you later. Bye.